Does it ever feel like you have to be hard on yourself, maybe even beat yourself up? Otherwise, you're not fully taking personal responsibility for your actions or your mistakes or your choices? If it is difficult for you to separate those two things out, in this video, I am going to show you how you can actually learn to give yourself grace and still take personal responsibility for your actions and maybe even your mistakes as a leader. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so that you are notified every time I do another video. This concept has set my high achieving clients free, not to mention put them on a real path to emotional resiliency and longevity in their work over burnout. Okay, so let's jump in. Normally there's a couple factors at play here. Number one, oftentimes I see just a high value of ownership, of taking personal responsibility. And I think that is a beautiful thing. It makes a great leader. When you have a high value of taking ownership, you're not one to typically put the blame on others and abdicate responsibility off of yourself. You are not usually one to go victim to your circumstances. It's a great value to have, and it makes a great leader, in my opinion. Another factor that often comes to play is around mistakes. Because when we mix making a mistake with taking personal responsibility and we put those together, oftentimes we internalize it, we take the fault for it, and if we're not careful, we take that to an extreme, hence the beating yourself up. This is my first big point that I want to make sure you hear and you hear really well. Taking responsibility is separate than beating yourself up. I know. If you are not careful, if you do not think about what you are thinking about, if you do not take every thought captive, if you do not keep one eye on the enemy and understand his schemes and what he's trying to do, this is what happens. Those thoughts get taken to the extreme and they go quickly. They go haywire very, very quickly. Here's what I mean by that. Instead of understanding that you are a human and maybe you made a poor choice, or you are a human and you made a big mistake, and those things are separate, your brain, with the help of the enemy, is going to combine those things and run with them. So it's almost as if a label gets put on you, or it becomes a lot more permanent. It becomes part of your identity. Instead of just being a human that made a mistake, oh, no. Now your brain wants to sell you this idea that you are a bad leader, or you are a bad mom, or you are a bad human, none of which is true. Here's an example, all right? You know how to walk, and sometimes you trip. Now, I know that seems like a really silly example, but it can be easier for us to start there and wrap our head around that example that, of course, I'm not a bad human just because I trip or just because, I might slip on something. No, that doesn't mean I'm a bad human at all. The same is true in other areas. Maybe you make a mistake as a leader, but that doesn't mean you are a bad leader. Maybe you yell at your kids, but that doesn't mean you are a bad mom. Now, freeze. I want you to just stop and take note of what the thoughts are, what the pushback is in your brain right now. And I want you to put them in the comments, because those are the thoughts that I really want you to take captive. You might be having thoughts with an underlying but, right? This sounds good, but I deserve to be fired, or I deserve to be punished. I deserve to have a consequence. Or maybe it's, I should know better. I'm the leader. I'm the adult. Maybe you're thinking, I won't learn or I won't grow unless I beat myself up, unless I take personal responsibility. Or maybe you're thinking, well, this isn't taking personal responsibility at all. You're letting me off the hook. This is how you start to take personal responsibility for your actions without beating yourself up as a human. First, start paying attention to the story that your brain is assigning to the fact that you've made a mistake. Where are you taking it on as a label on your identity level? Here is the ironic thing about beating yourself up. Most people think that when they beat themselves up or they're hard on themselves, it's taking personal responsibility, and they think that it's going to help them change their behavior. But the truth is, the more that you think those thoughts, those negative thoughts, the more you're actually going to start finding evidence for those thoughts, which means the more likely you are to actually repeat those patterns. And I don't think you want that. The next thing I want you to do is really start challenging your brain. I want you to start asking yourself if these things are actually related. Is it true that you have to beat yourself up in order to take personal responsibility? Could they be unrelated? Could this be unnecessary, this beating yourself up in order to change and grow? What if it was possible to take responsibility without beating yourself up as a human? The last thing I want you to do is one of my favorite exercises I do with my clients, and those are both and identity statements. Do you believe that you can be both? Do you believe you can make mistakes and still be a good leader? Is it possible to drop the ball sometimes and still be reliable, dependable, responsible? Is it possible to own your mistakes and keep it separate from your worth and your innate value and your goodness as a human? This, ladies and gentlemen, is grace. And grace is not necessarily fair, but it is absolutely necessary to keep moving forward. And it is absolutely necessary to move forward and have a life in freedom. So let's start learning to give ourselves grace so that we can give others grace. And the way that we do that is by receiving the grace that God gives us. Up until now, you thought that beating yourself up and being overly hard on yourself was the way to push through, to be resilient. But it's actually the opposite. Giving yourself grace is the way that we create emotional resiliency, even in the face of challenge. If you are habitually hard on yourself and you want to learn how to give yourself grace, then download my Change the Relationship with Yourself challenge, and let's start detaching some of these stories and some of these labels that you've been assigning to yourself and your performance. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos just like it.